All right, everybody, it's Andreas Hale here with the Sporting News. I'm here with the one and only Andre Ward, who goes from boxer to a second career author, has a documentary out about him. Man, it's good to talk to you, man. It's really good to see that you're flourishing on this second half of your career. Before I get your response to that, usually when we see fighters with books, the book is usually indicative of some problems that they had during their fighting career. Sugar Ray Leonard talks about his cocaine use. Mike Tyson talks about his issues. You don't have those issues during your fighting career. It's not this salacious tell-all. So I want to start with what made you decide to do a book at this point of your life? Because you're not even 40 yet, bro, and you already have a life story to tell.
Well, I will say it was a lot of drama early in my life. By the time I came on the scene in 2004, and I'm fresh out of the streets, I'm trying to figure life out. I had just given my life to God, and I had just fallen back in love with the sport. So, and the world saw me build my career all the way to 2017 from that point. And my tale is interesting because I go back, and I'm digging up, a lot of old bones from my youth and my teenage years. And like you said, you usually don't see that. Why now? It's the right time. It's the right time where, I can focus and tell the story the right way. I got my mother's blessing to tell the story. I didn't have that during my career. She wasn't ready. My father passed in 2002, as I detail in the book and in the documentary. And I had to really spend a lot of thought and prayer trying to figure out what his legacy was and then how to tell it. So it's a lot of moving pieces. You don't just snap your fingers and write a book. You don't just snap your fingers and have a production like a documentary or a movie. This was the right time for me.
Let me ask you this, because there's also this part about telling your story where you got to be far enough removed from that aspect of your life. Because if you're still entangled in it in some way, there might be some half-truths, right, about your boxing career. There might be some half-truths about your childhood. Were you settled in being so far removed from those situations and your boxing career that it felt comfortable to be able to tell this story now?
I can't say that it was comfortable. I can't say that I was far removed from, living that type of life, but I had to overcome a lot of shame, man, to be able to do the doc and a book. And the title of the book, Killing the Image, it's a very provocative title because it can lend people to think about many different things. Like, so what is he saying? What we saw over the years is not real? What image is he trying to kill? And I've said this in many interviews talking about this book. A conversation with my pastor really gave me the revelation that I needed. He said, Dre, you out here talking to these young guys, and sometimes you get frustrated because you think they don't know what you've been through. And he said, they don't. He said, you got to kill the image. And he said, who you are is real, but it's not who you've always been. So to get to that place where I was comfortable, I had to really come to grips with the fact that I'm not that type of person no more. I did a lot of stupid things when I was younger. And who I am is real, but you got to tell it. You got to tell it. You got to tell on yourself, so to speak. And I personally, my thing was never trying to reveal these kind of things to sell a fight. They're too sacred to me. They're too close to my vest. They're too close to my heart. I'm an 80s baby. We just don't get down like that. That's not what we do. That's not how I was raised. There's steps I had to go through to be ready to tell it. I got there, told it, getting great testimonies from people all over the world, man, and it's working out.
Let me ask you, your pastor is the one and only Napoleon Kaufman, who, for those who weren't aware, was an amazing running back at one point in time. And everybody thought he was going to be the next big thing. And he turned to God as well. How important was it to have that person in your life that lived that life of a star and had that spotlight on him to be able to help you navigate? Because a lot of young cats, we don't get somebody that is in a similar position that we were in to help guide us through. We usually have people, I don't want to say beneath us, but don't experience it trying to tell us what to do.
I mean, it was such a God thing. I couldn't have scripted that any better. And it was always my desire to walk away on top. And I talk about this in the book is, I would say those things even before I really knew what it meant. Man, I want to leave on top. I want to leave on top. And I used to have them conversations with Virgil about why fighters end their careers a certain kind of way. Like, man, he was on top. He had millions of dollars. Everybody loved him. And then I see him shuffle in a room and it just broke my heart. And he would say, baby, this is how it's always been. Fighters don't take care of their money, or they get taken for their money. They don't manage their money. Then when their career is over, they start going to drugs and alcohol. They start doing things. And I knew that I didn't want that. Whatever that was, I knew I didn't want that. So I started studying Jim Brown and how he walked away from the Cleveland Browns. I started studying Barry Sanders. I studied my passion, Napoleon Kaufman. I studied George Foreman. I know George came back after 10 years and had a whole nother career, but he still left on his own terms and was a successful businessman outside the ring. But it took the voice of my pastor at certain checkpoints to say, nah, it's not time now. Man, it might be time. After Kovalev won, I thought I was done. I was like, man, I don't need this no more. My money is good. I just went through a crazy camp with my knee. I don't have no questions on if I won or not. I won a close fight. I'm not going to apologize for that. But, man, I'm getting a lot of heat. I'm not going to keep doing it. He said, man, Dre, he said, you can do what you want to do, but I think you might have one more left in you. So it's those pivotal points that make a person like him, man, just the difference maker.
What are some more difficult stories to tell? You talk about in the book where you didn't know if your drug use was an addiction at one point in time, and it's shortly after your father's passing. And then later in the book, you obviously talk about not necessarily a fear, but your apprehensions going into that first Kovalev fight and dealing with the move up in weight. What's the more difficult story for you to tell? Is it the childhood story? Or is it the things you went through in your boxing career?
I think it's the childhood stuff, partly the stuff that I went through that I didn't have a choice or a say in the matter. Even to this day, even though I've forgiven my mom and my father, that part still feels unfair. You're born into the family you're born into, and I got thrust into a situation where one is a heroin addict, one is a crack addict, and it's a crack epidemic around the world. That part, I look at my younger self and I'm reading about my younger self, and that part feels unfair. Now, that's a hard story to tell. But then at the same time, I have compassion for my mother and my father because they didn't know what they was getting themselves into. My father first used heroin. He didn't know what he was getting into. He was just trying to escape his home life with his father and the issues they had, and depression and a broken heart that he had from a young lady that he got, dumped by. And he didn't realize that was going to be a lifelong addiction that he had to face. And the same thing with my mother. So their stories are very difficult to tell for those reasons. But then also seeing myself when I was blind at one point in time in my life, when I really thought that I didn't want nothing to do with boxing, I wrote boxing off. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was literally walking the former paths of my mother and my father. Those same generational curses had gotten a hold of me. I'm drinking. Here comes the drugs. Boxing, I don't want to do no boxing. I would qualify for tournaments, make it to the nationals, and then I would ghost Verge every time. And I'm thankful for him chasing me down. I'm thankful for James Prince finding me in a trap house and calling me on a landline saying, man, where you at? I'm at the Nationals in Las Vegas at the Golden Gloves. Where are you at? And starting to build a relationship. So whether it was my pastor, whether it was Verge, or whether it was somebody like James Prince, man, I'm grateful for those men. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them.
I'm glad you brought up James Prince. Look, I come from the music industry. I spent a lot of years being very keenly aware of James Prince and the respect he has in the music industry and what he's done in boxing. The funny thing about James Prince is it's much more subtle in boxing in terms of his exposure, right? Like people see him, but you don't see him talk a lot to a lot of people, but you know how instrumental he is. When you first came in contact with Jay Prince, you kind of talk about in the book, like there was some back and forth that you guys had. Obviously the lawsuit, the counter lawsuit. What did you think of him then, and how did it change over the years, knowing his history and knowing how instrumental he was to your career? But there were some conflicts there. Was it a growing relationship? I don't want to say like a father figure, because I know Virgil was kind of similar in that sense, but what was Jay Prince to you exactly?
Man, I think he threw me a lifeline at one point in time. The story I just told you about being in that trap house and sort of ducking Verge, and somehow, some way they ran me down. And I'm on the phone with this man, and I'm telling him all my problems and what I got going on and why I'm not at the Nationals. And he's like, man, listen, we're going to figure all that misdemeanor stuff out. We need to get you back in the ring. God has given you a talent. You don't want to waste it. I never forgot those words. And I talked to the Shelly Finkles. I talked to the Cameron Dunkers. I talked to all the people that were around, and they never talked about my personal life. They didn't talk about the person. They only talked about the business. So that was my first intro to Jay. Anything about his reputation, I didn't really concern myself with it, because I just dealt with the man that I saw in front of me. When I went to Houston, it was a lot of love. It was a lot of respect. And I knew that he was a figure. I knew he was a factor, not just in Houston, but everywhere he went, because I saw how people respected him. And as a young man, Jay got big whips, big houses, and I'm fresh out the streets. So I'm like, man, he got it. And that drew me to him. But the conversations we had, the connection that we had with God, and the way he walked with me in those times when there wasn't no guarantee that I was going to make it, win a gold medal, or become a world champion. That's one thing I'll never forget about James Prince, and I'll be always grateful for. And the issues we had, me and James Prince had two fights our whole life. And it was always around contract time, right? Mm-hmm. We had one early in the middle of my career, when I felt like my deal was up. And we had one right before we signed with Rock Nation. That's it. Me and him don't argue. We don't fight. We don't bicker. We don't go back and forth, but we got through it. And it's a scripture in the Bible that says that a brother is built for the day of adversity. Sometimes in real relationships confirm that they're real. And this is more than just a business relationship or a friendship. When you face some adversity and you get through it. First time I faced some adversity with somebody, they run for the hills or we can't work it out. That's a sign that that person was an associate or friend or a business partner, but he wasn't a brother. James Prince is a brother to me. He's like an uncle to me. And I'm forever grateful for my relationship with him.
One other thing I want to talk about, and I want you to elaborate on this a little bit more. The meeting y'all had with Don King. Obviously, Don got a reputation, right? But a lot of us from the outside, we only hear the stories. I want you to go back, for those who haven't picked up the book yet, I want you to kind of talk about that first meeting. What did you anticipate coming out of Don King's mouth? I know Jay said, he ain't going to take no deal. We just going to listen to this man talk. Talk about what happened at that meeting.
Listen to him talk, we did. Man, that man is, y'all know he got a mouthpiece. And he'll say some wild stuff and not bat an eye. And I just, as I detailed in the book and I detailed in the doc, we're at a meeting, we're taking meetings with all these different promoters, and Don King was one of our last stops. So I already knew Don was a character. I'd done my research. I knew what time it was for the most part, but had never been in his presence. And he's a big personality, obviously. And you feel it as soon as you step in the room with him. And I mean, he had his gold chains on. He had his American flag jacket on. His hair was sticking straight to the ceiling. He had his flag on. Why he had the flag in the middle of the restaurant at this hotel in New York, I have no idea, but he had it and he was talking his talk and he was selling. He was doing a lot of selling, but we already knew we're not going to sign nothing. And what did it for me was Prince at a certain point turned the corner and said, "Oh, okay." He said, "All right, King, man, I hear you. Now, tell me this. What you thinking about signing Dre for?" Don said, "Brother, we can sign for whatever you wanted to sign for. You just put the number on the contract and we going to sign it." Man, we looked at each other, man. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Don is who we thought he was. He a mouthpiece. And great experience, but it wasn't going to be a good fit with me and Don.
Well, it seemed like it worked out, right? Like it worked out all the right ways. I want to talk about a few things outside of the book right now in terms of your professional career. You have talked about this, and this has been alluded to before. How close was there ever a reality to you fighting Anthony Joshua at heavyweight? Because that was tossed around, and people have wondered how close that really came to coming to fruition.
That was always like a plan that we had internally. And it wasn't always, Joshua wasn't always a target, but heavyweight was a target. And if you go back to the Kovalev 2 press conference post-fight, Verge mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know he was going to mention it. I kind of look at him like, man, don't let the cat out the bag. Because, I felt like that was probably going to be my last one. But, it is you come home, you rest, you start thinking like, man, maybe a couple more. And the plan, and Bill, you don't know this, and Joshua didn't know this, because we hadn't made contact with their teams, but that was the plan to sort of target, do a fight at home and do a victory lap, and then target Tony Bellew at cruiserweight, test the weight, and then target Anthony Joshua. And those would have been, both of those would have been tough fights for different reasons. But I like myself against both guys because I've never had a problem fighting bigger guys. And you get to a certain point in time in boxing and in warfare and in battle where, well, he can land a big punch. That's always a concern. That no longer moves you the way it did when you were younger. This guy's a puncher. Okay, what else is new? We're going to take the right hand, we're going to put it in the trunk, and he ain't going to never see it. You just get to that place. And I was at that point in time in my career, especially coming off of 20 rounds with Sergey Kovalev. I didn't believe that I could be beat. But my heart shifted, man, and I felt like the right thing to do was to walk away. But I have to be honest. On a bad day, I often think about what could have been if I would have took that leap to cruiserweight and took that leap to heavyweight.
I mean, everybody's going to ask that question, right? Then the other question a lot of people ask is two other fighters, Canelo and Triple G. And I remember in the documentary, he's like, I'm just waiting for this man to say my name.
Yeah.
You ever think about the multiverse? Things change and things cracked a different way. Do you think your heart would have been in it for those fights come training camp? Because the hardest part that everybody talks about is once you hit that training camp, knowing that the injuries you had to deal with, do you think that you would have been at your best for those fights if you would have agreed to any of them?
I'm going to say this. Golovkin and Canelo are not in the same category for me. Golovkin never wanted to fight. I don't care what Tom Loeffler says. I don't care what Golovkin says. I don't care what their PR guy says. They never wanted to fight. And that's fine. I'm not a bully. I'm not a guy that's out here trying to pick fights with guys in a weight class smaller than me. But as I've stated many, many times, you're not going to build your reputation of being this killer off of my name in my weight class, especially when I'm a top dog in that weight class. You're going to hear my voice. And I just didn't, I don't respect the games, and I don't respect, telling the fans one thing, but behind the scenes, we got emails and we got, as we put out in the documentary, we got receipts, man. You didn't want to fight. So he's not in the category. The only reason why me and Canelo were in the same conversation is because we fought a common opponent. He fought Kovalev long after I fought him. And, he did what he had to do. He fought a great fight, Canelo. But that's the only reason why we in the same conversation about fighting. That's probably the closest I've ever come. And I've said this before, to wanting to come back or thinking about coming back is that, because it's a lot of talk around, Canelo's fighting Kovalev. And, man, what you think? That's when my juices started to moving like, man, okay, well, man, I could see myself coming back for that. And he did what he did to him. And I told myself, I said, if he calls my name, if he says my name, and he's starting to campaign and push for this fight, we might have something. And he didn't. He took the route of, I'm going to check on my team. And, that's his right. He didn't have to call me. But then I had to kind of remind myself, okay, I'm going to reinforce the fact that I'm retired. I'm not chasing it, but I would answer the call if my name was called.
Yeah, we always wonder. When we talk about, you had your issues with promoters once upon a time, and, you dealt with the issue with HBO. It felt like HBO didn't really completely have your back. A similar fighter going through that right now is Ryan Garcia, where his issues with Oscar De La Hoya are surfacing and the things that happened at the press conference. Coming from where you came from, what is your take on that situation and how it's playing out publicly? Because a lot of things happen behind the scenes, but it seems like Oscar's had two situations. Not only with Ryan, he had a similar situation with Canelo. And I know, you like mentoring young fighters, but when you see something like this happening, what do you think is actually going on? And what's your take on the whole situation?
It's hard to completely say. I don't know all the details, but from where I sit, I don't like the fact that it's public. Teams are going to fight, be it about money, the pace in which you're moving me, too fast, too slow. It's a lot of reasons why, promoters and fighters or managers and fighters can get into it. That's not uncommon. It is uncommon to see it unfold the way you're talking about it, where they're taking jabs at each other in each other's presence. I've never seen nothing like that. Nobody's in the room when you see another guy taking a jab at another guy, and they're a lot more coy when they do it, if it happens. I don't like it. It's hard to believe that something like this can be repaired, but you never know. I think that everybody needs to keep that stuff offline. It's good headlines, it's good for clicks and views, you know what I'm saying? But it's just not a good look. It's not a good feel. And I think what's happening with Oscar is, with the Canelos and with, Ryan, is that they've allowed Oscar's personal life and the things that he didn't live up to in their eyes cause them to kind of turn and say, man, I'm speaking out against this. This guy's not who I thought he was. And it's sad to see that, because we got heroes in the game. It's like me getting with Roy and seeing it like, man, Roy is not who I thought he was. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a lot of it is just, Ryan feeling like stuff ain't right. But at the same time, he's using his platform, which is very, very big, to speak out. And I just would like to see the older gentlemen The B-Hops and the Oscars say, we're gonna deal with this offline. So it's just, it's not a good look. It's not good. And it's just spilling out into the public, man. And I hope they get it situated, man, because it's just not good, bro. This boxing game is hard enough when your team is in alignment. And when y'all are on the right path, it's twice as hard when you're dealing with issues internally.
Definitely. One of the things I also want to talk to you about is Shakur Stevenson's last fight. You were there. You were in the locker room. Famous picture. You guys all in there with a big-ass goose egg between all y'all in the loss column. Shakur didn't have the performance that people wanted to see out of him. And you have been in a similar situation where you had performances that people were critical of you. And they try to slide you down the pound-for-pound rankings to say maybe he's not as good, or all this critique has come up. After Shakur's fight, have you talked to him about that? Because even he told us after the fight, he was like, that was a poor performance. Like, he was very honest about it. He didn't want to give an excuse, but it's so hard when things are going on because you don't want to give an excuse, but it's like, damn, sometimes you want to tell people, things were happening. Did you talk to Shakur, and what did you think about how that all that unfolded?
For sure, man. Like, of course, we talked that night extensively. I stayed with him the whole night. And man, that's why they said heavy is the head that wears the crown. He's been in conversations with all-time greats. He's been in conversations with greats. I'm gonna be the next this, or arguably one of the best fighters in the world and the best fighter in his weight class. Like, this is what comes with it, man. Like, this is not like abnormal. This is what happens. The people that you have issues with that are in and around your weight class, they're gonna pounce. Media members that don't like you, they're gonna pounce. Guys YouTubers, writers who have been pushing for other guys, right? That you may fight one day and they've been going strong for that guy. There's an opportunity to pounce. You got to be able to deal with all of this. You can't just deal with the good nights. You got to deal with the quote unquote bad nights where you don't perform the way you want to perform. And it's all part of the process. And sometimes them kind of nights are good for us because it keeps you hungry. It really keeps you humble. And it forces you to go in your bag and say, I gotta come different next time. They don't believe that I got this in me, and they soon forgot my last good performance. Let me put them on notice again. You need that. It's something very abnormal about you taking off a robe and a shirt and getting in there with another man to fight in front of the whole world and put it all on the line with 8-ounce gloves and 10-ounce gloves. No, that ain't normal. And money ain't always a good motivator. That's part of it. You got to find reasons to get in that ring and climb inside them ropes and do that time and time again. That being said, nobody's more critical of his decision than he is. He knows he didn't perform the way he trained to perform, and he'll figure it out. I think he'll be fine. I will say the silver lining in all of it, and this is what he and I did talk about, is that though you didn't perform the way you want to perform, though they're gonna make you hear it, it's gonna be written about for some time, and you're gonna have to fight and show them that they're wrong in your next fight. Look, bro, I'll take a bad night like that. Some cats, they in the hospital on a bad night.
Right.
Some cats looking at their check and it's half gone because their business wasn't handled. Some cats for a bad night, they swole, they lumped up, they're in that emergency room, and they family sitting around them, and they can barely talk and barely walk. That's a bad night. Some guys looking up at the light. Some guys walking out that ring with an L. For a master boxer, sometimes a bad night is, man, I didn't perform. I didn't let my shots go the way that I wanted to, and I didn't put on the performance that I want to, and people were not happy about it. But, man, I got my check, though. I'm kissing my baby. I'm in my right mind. I didn't go to the hospital. He went to his hotel that night. He didn't go to the emergency room. So the worst thing I got to deal with is y'all saying my stock dropped and there's some disbelief right now about me. Okay. It's just a little bit more fuel for the fire. So he's going to be fine, not worried about it. He didn't perform the way he wanted to. He's much better than what he showed that night, and he'll come back and be better.
Couple more for you. One, this weekend, Devin Haney is fighting Regis Prograis. Man, this is an interesting narrative about Devin Haney. I think a lot of people forget the kid's 25, and I'm calling him a kid because young fighters usually don't do stuff like this. He became undisputed, moved up. He's fighting Regis Prograis, not Rolly Romero. I don't want to disrespect Rolly, but it's Regis Prograis.
Facts.
What do you think about that fight as a whole? Like, the man just came off fighting Vasily Lomachenko. He's jumping up in weight to fight Regis Prograis. From your eyes, in your commentary position, what do you make of this fight, and what do you make of Devin Haney's career thus far?
I'm gonna start with the career. I think Bill Haney has done a masterful job with how he's moved his son. Everybody doesn't like it, but that's par for the course. If everybody likes the move you're making, you're probably not making the right moves for the fighter. So I think he's doing the right things. He's making all the right moves up to this point in terms of matchups and timing. He's done a good job with that. And he's gotten his son paid along the way. He's built his brand along the way. And, it's hard to argue with that. And Devin Haney is the truth. He's got skill. He's probably one of the most technically sound fighters in the game today. I think Devin hits a lot harder than people realize. I think you're going to see that as he moves up in weight and doesn't have to strip off that extra 5 pounds. He's going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot more physically strong. And Devin Haney, he can box, bro. He's very, very good, and he's a lot tougher. And I think he showed that in the Loma fight that people realized. There was some moments in there where he could have took his foot off the gas, or he could have turned, and he didn't. And he continued. He got himself together, and he went back to the game plan. Showed a lot of poise for a young man that age against that kind of fighter on that stage. In terms of Saturday, it's interesting because from a weight standpoint, I think Devin Haney has the advantage because Regis, who I got a lot of respect for, his fight game, his mentality, and how he goes about his craft, I think Haney has the advantage because similar to me and Kovalev, people think, oh, he's been at the weight class longer, so he's bigger. It's like, nah, he might be bigger. Doesn't mean he's stronger. And he's sucking himself down to get to 140.
Right.
That shows up after that 6th or 7th round, depending on how the fight is going. Same thing with Kovalev. I'm coming up. I got more energy. I had a better camp. I didn't have a crazy weight cut. In fact, I ate the morning of, hydrated, and I didn't have to rebound crazy like you did. So there's a misconception and misnomers around weight classes and who has the advantage. The guy coming up, if he knows how to box and he knows his way around that ring, he ultimately has the advantage because I don't have to look like a skeleton on that scale. My face is still full, my body's still full, and I didn't have to tear my body up to get on that scale and make the weight. It's a little harder for Regis. That being said, Regis gonna have to deal with the boxing of Devin Haney, the sharpness, the IQ, and Devin Haney's gonna have to deal with Regis and his power, his physical strength, his toughness. And I think Regis has the IQ too. He just don't use it as much as he should. It's a great matchup, and it's a fascinating matchup with Devin coming off of the Loma fight, as you just mentioned.
The worst, well, there's 2 really bad terms in boxing that get overused. Robbery, right? That's one of them.
Yeah.
And ducking a fighter. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you, are we getting dangerously close to the idea that Canelo is ducking David Benavidez? Following the performance against Demetrius Andrade, the man's a WBC interim champion. He's never lost. He's a 2-time champion. But Canelo seems to be avoiding this man. And there's talks about a Jaime Munguia fight. There's talks like this fight might happen. When does a duck become real? Triple G ducked you.
Yeah.
Do we think we're getting close to a situation where, for whatever reason, Canelo doesn't want to fight this man? Or do you think it's just business and this is something that Canelo's kind of stringing him along?
I've been saying this about Canelo. And it's hard to say it and then give him credit because the only thing people listen to is the negative thing you said. But it's a truth and it's facts. I think Canelo is a really, really good fighter. You cannot argue with what he's done from a marketing standpoint. You cannot argue with how he's gotten his country behind him and the fact that they show up for him no matter who he's fought. But the problem with Canelo is there is a lot of picking and choosing along the path of his career. The first thing people will do is they'll say, what about this? He's got these names. Another layer to that. At what point in time in their careers did he fight those names? Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto gave him everything that he could handle, and he was past his prime. You got to look at that. When he fought Floyd, it was almost like Floyd was being kind of like pushed to fight him in the deal that he signed. You got to fight him at the end of this, or at one point in time throughout this deal. But then when Floyd does what he does to him, he's too young. He's green. And I believe that the Canelo's gift is also his curse. The gift is the marketability, the ability to snap his fingers and generate tens of millions of dollars. But when you do that, where's the motivation to risk all of that against this dude or that dude. Let me get him. And people say, oh, he risked it against, Kovalev. Kovalev wasn't Kovalev. He was Sergey Kovalev. He certainly wasn't the crusher anymore. Very strategic, calculated move. What about Bivol? He miscalculated with Bivol, which is why we haven't seen a rematch. These are facts. Now, Canelo's getting a little long in it too. Does he still have something left in the tank? Of course. Is he very dangerous? Yes, of course. But I don't know if I want to deal with that dude right there. And Benavidez not being a big enough name and not having enough, that could be used a couple of years ago. You can't use that now. And it's interesting because Benavidez hasn't taken the route that a lot of fighters take, 90%, 95% of them. He's not calling him a dud. He's not being disrespectful. He's calling for the fight with his performances and the way he's taking care of business. But in the media, he's saying, look, man, we got to fight. Like, you don't have to fight me. I get it. If you don't fight me, I'm going to move on. But and I think that approach is sort of endearing him even more to the fans, even Mexican fans, where now they're starting to put pressure on Canelo, and you're right. He has been very, very quiet. But my thing is this, you can take it one of two ways. If you don't want to fight Benavidez, I got a smaller dude you can fight. Terrence Crawford. I'm not sure you're going to take that one either.
I'm not so sure about it either. The last question, the book is called Killing the Image. We just talked about Canelo, he gets like the benefit of the doubt a lot of times, right? We talk about other fighters, a lot of Eastern European fighters get the benefit of the doubt by boxing media. Why don't black fighters get the benefit of the doubt? There's a lot of criticism from boxing media that gets lobbied at Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, yourself, Floyd Mayweather. You all have one thing in common. I'm just going to call a spade, being black fighters. Why don't black fighters get the benefit of the doubt, in your humble opinion? Because you've had to deal with this as well. Whereas other people, they get a lot of passes for not fighting people or being bigger stars. What is it about the boxing media and black fighters?
It's tough, man. It's tough to say. It's tough to say. I try to be very, very careful with the race card because I don't ever want to put a jacket on somebody and it doesn't fit. That's a heavy jacket to put on somebody. And I also, don't like to make a blanket statement. Oh, media, not all media. Oh, YouTube, not all YouTubers. So I think there's definitely some of that in the media, and I think it's some solid guys as well that are really objective and they try the best they can to try to balance things out. The things that I've spoken out against is more the pressure that there's been on fighters to behave a certain way. Show me your life in this kind of way. Don't show me the family life and the two dogs. Show me the car. Show me the mansion. Give me entertainment. Well, entertainment, that ain't entertainment for everybody, right? Like everybody, especially a young African-American fighter, shouldn't always have to entertain you in that kind of way. And some of that stuff does spill over into the ring performances and how they're viewed. At the end of the day, man, I've learned to spend less time worrying about why. And my motivation, my focus, my drive, my energy is I'm going to make everybody a believer at the end of the day. Now, you still may hate, you still may say, he didn't, but it's going to be real hard for you to do this at the end of the day. And that's where I try to keep my focus. And at the end, and I also do this, my faith plays a role in this because I don't believe that anybody can stop me from what God wants me to have. If I only got to this level of fame, that was mine. If I made this amount of money, that was my level of money. I try not to give man that much credit where I can say, you blocking me, you stopping me. No. If God's allowing you to do that, not stopping something, well, hey, man, let God's will be done. This stuff is teaching me. I'm becoming a better man because of it. I'm learning how to deal with this kind of stuff. And the question is, how are you going to respond to it? Yelling and screaming on a soapbox hasn't gotten much done. You got to do it in the ring. You got to do it with your lifestyle. You got to do it with how you in the sport. Similar to Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford got a lot of heat for a lot of different reasons with things that I didn't agree with. And there were some overlapping similarities to our careers and his perception, right? Well, he don't do this, and he don't talk, and he don't. Well, some of the media are not worthy for you to talk to them and give them your heart and give you everything. So I got to be sensitive with you, bro, because you burned me before. Man, one of my other brothers in the sport, I saw how you handle him. So I got to use wisdom with this stuff. But now, Terrence Crawford just kept chipping away. Terrence Crawford just kept believing about, man, I'm going to get this fight with Spence. He kept taking care of his business outside the ring. He wasn't in the headlines for the wrong reason. He's a family man. And it's not until recently that people say he blew up. But I'm like, he been this dude. You got to do it like that. That's how you do it. We could talk about it, we could discuss it, but it's really how you live in your life. It's really how you performing in that ring. It's really with that. Now he's the toast of the town. Now everybody wants to talk to Terrence Crawford. Well, it came late, but it came.
Killing the image. That's what it's all about. Andre, I appreciate the time, my brother. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on everything. One last little small question.
Yeah.
We're going to see you doing commentary again. We kind of miss you. We kind of miss your analysis on fights. Is there a path getting back there?
I miss it, man. I think the right situation at the right time, y'all could definitely see me back out there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Andre, again, thank you again for your time. Good luck on everything. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Appreciate you, man.